Plastic. It would be hard to imagine a world without this modern innovation. And yet many of us take this material for granted, not realizing that only a few decades ago, plastics were not nearly as common as they are today. The early years of the plastics industry faced many challenges and obstacles, and it was the hard work of groups like SPI and Keller and Heckman which helped pave the road to the plastic world we live in today. One man stands out as a true pioneer in this industry. That man is Jerry Heckman. Jerry Heckman's work and advocacy for the plastic industry spans a career of more than 5 decades. But his career didn't begin in the food and drug industry. It began in telecommunications at the firm of Dow, Loveness and Albertson, until one day he received a request that would change everything.
The president of SPI at that time, William T. Cruz, talked to me and asked me if I could find them a food and drug lawyer. I talked to all of them that I could find, and they were all busy, so I told Cruz that, look, I can't really find somebody who's an expert in food and drug law, nor do I think that's necessary because this is a legislative matter. We'll take a crack at it. And that's how I became a food and drug lawyer.
The plastics industry was in a period of tremendous growth in the late 1950s and 60s, and Jerry quickly became an essential advisor to SPI, dealing with all manner of issues facing the fledgling industry and competition from other sectors.
1958, when the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act was amended to include FDA being given the authority to clear food additives. As part of that, what Congress did was give FDA the obligation of also clearing food contact substances, food additives, even though they're not intended to get into food, but because they could be brought in contact with food, they lumped them all together.
And Mr. Heckman had been working with SPI on a limited basis, so they turned to Mr. Heckman and asked him if he could help them in this new FDA regulation. So from the very beginning, when FDA first looked at the regulation of food packaging materials, Mr. Heckman was involved with that at an inception. And with his involvement over well more than 50 years now in the regulation of packaging materials and other food contact items, he's been there at every major juncture.
We had a really close relationship with SPI and still do. And so almost anything that happened in the plastics industry, we had a voice in and some say-so about it.
As the industry continued to evolve and face new challenges, SPI formed the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Packaging Committee, a committee that was to play a significant role in the industry for years to come.
It was formed in March of 1957. I think the first meeting was March 1st, 1957. There were only about 7 or 8 guys who were at the initial meeting, and we went from there.
Mr. Heckman was making a science-based system so that this committee worked on not only the legal part and the policy part of the regulation, but that we always based our decisions on very sound science.
Well, the committee has had a voice for over 50 years now with international regulatory agencies, most notably, of course, FDA here in the United States. And, we advocate for the use of sound science in the regulation of food, drug, and cosmetic packaging.
The committee has established itself with a reputation of being a very technical-oriented and very good resource for not only the FDA, but other agencies around the world for our expertise in the food packaging area.
The committee provides some context and interpretation, makes the regulations understandable for the SPI members, has helped frame the discussion between the industry and the regulators. I think has helped influence the regulations, be more practical. I think it's been a tremendous resource to the plastics industry.
As Jerry continued to help guide SPI in the plastics industry, he and Joe Keller decided to leave Dow Loveness and start their own firm.
We started Keller and Heckman in 1962 by leaving Dow Loveness and Albertson. Mostly Joe's idea, because he had money and I didn't. And so he bought us a house on 17th Street.
The firm continued to work for SPI and other clients and became known for its regulatory work in food and drug, telecommunications, transportation, and trade association law. It wasn't long before Jerry made a forward-thinking decision that would dramatically change the future of Keller and Heckman for years to come.
It became very obvious to me pretty early in the game was that scientific information and knowledge was absolutely essential.
Jerry Heckman decided back in 1972 that it was really critical for his practice to have staff scientists, or started with one staff scientist, to guide him as well as his clients in the technical aspects.
And I knew Dan Dixler, began to know Dan Dixler, because he started coming to the meetings of the food committee, which were always at least 2 a year, right away. And he was a really good member of the committee. We knew he was a really smart scientist. And he was the beginning of our scientific community. It made us, without a doubt, the people to go to for food additive petitions for packaging materials.
Keller and Heckman's scientific staff became an integral and essential part of the firm. As Keller and Heckman continued to grow over the years, opening new offices both here in the United States as well as across the world, the staff grew to include chemists and toxicologists, many of whom first served at FDA, EPA, and other government agencies, and bring vital insight to client projects.
The scientists here really support the legal work that gets done and support the lawyers. We provide the areas of expertise that they don't have the time or energy or inclination to learn themselves. And in turn, we provide the same services for our clients. And in fact, there are many occasions where the clients call us alone.
We have 4 offices outside of our main office in DC. They are Brussels, Belgium, San Francisco, California, and Shanghai, China. And then we have a satellite office that we've just opened in the Midwest.
Over the years, Jerry has received many acknowledgments of his service and achievement for his clients. One of the most significant contributions to the industry was the bringing about of new language in the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, a brilliant initiative known as the Food Contact Notification.
The system that FDA operates under now for food contact substances, and has done so for the last 11 years, was really the brainchild of Jerry Heckman.
We came up with the idea that you really shouldn't have this petition process. It was going to be too arduous. That instead, it should be good enough for a company to notify FDA about its product and tell them everything that they wanted to know in petitions, and then make it possible for FDA to look at the notification, and if they didn't have any problem with it, let it become effective. That's the Food Contact Notification Program.
We had to work with Congress and the legislators and legislative staff on the Hill, as well as the regulators at FDA, and with the industry to reach a compromise which eventually led to the legislation and the regulations that began what is now the Food Contact Notification Program, where over 1,100 notifications have now been filed and is also being followed as a model around the world.
It wasn't just industry complaining, it was industry working together with the U.S. government.
It definitely revolutionized getting new things and innovative things on the marketplace, and I think both industry and the FDA are very satisfied with that process now, and it's made our relationship with FDA a lot better over the years.
Jerry continues to work with his clients at Keller and Heckman, although maybe not at the hectic pace of his early years. But his experience and insight continues to be a formative influence in shaping policy decisions for the firm and regulated industries they represent.
From a standpoint of history, there's not many people like Jerry that can say, I was there when the law was written in 1958. He's been around that long. He's been a watchdog, so to speak, on behalf of this committee because he was the first counsel for the committee.
I've always thought of him as this welcoming presence, down to earth, friendly. Of course, he's like a legend in the food contact and plastics industries because of the legacies built through Keller and Heckman.
He was probably the best sort of mentor a new young person could have working here. When I would write anything for him, he would always take the time not only to go through it and mark it up, but then he'd sit down with me and he'd go through it with me and explain every change he made so that I could learn from that. Nobody today would take the time, would have the time to do that.
Every day from the beginning of my time here, I was always hearing about his contributions of knowledge and his vision and how important to the growth of SPI his engagement was over the years.
What's always struck me is very unique to someone of his stature is how he thinks of the firm as an institution, how he deeply cares about passing it on to the next generation. He's been very generous with people in terms of giving credit for developing clients, for steering clients in different areas to people in the firm. And he's not all about Jerry Heckman, he's all about the firm and its reputation and doing everything he can to foster that and pass it on to the next generation.